I see a little clapping hand. Hello, hello. We are live streaming across multiple platforms. The platforms are like getting up and running. Good to see everyone here today in our very niche organizing here in what some would call flyover country, which we all are calling home. Glad to see folks here. And waiting just to make sure we have all of the people on before we get started. Um, my name is Rachel O'Leary Carmona. I am the executive director of Women's March. We are in a webinar format here, so there is a Q&A down at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, we have some answers. We don't have all the answers, but we're going to try because you know it is a real crazy time to be to be in the United States. Yes, and I was just going to ask. Okay, so now the chat is up and running. Check it in the chat. Where are you from? How are you doing today? What's up for you? We are Oklahoma. I'm coming in hot from Amarillo. All of our panelists who you all have clearly heard about because you've got a text or you got a social media message or you got an email. You're here for a reason, and the reason is we're trying to get some shit to shake along the I-40 corridor because there's some real crazy stuff happening. Also, just to remind folks, it's a tough time. We're all going through things. On Women's March webinars, we try to have a lot of grace and give some folks some time. We are going to get to nitty gritty. We're going to give you a landscape analysis. We are going to tell you what's happening in the country. We are going to tell you what's happening in the state. We are going to tell you what's happening in Amarillo and why Amarillo matters. Like spoiler alert, it's Kaczmarek's Court. We're going to tell you why this has become a specific battleground. We're going to talk about what else there is to do and what we're trying to build, and we're going to get folks to get in. What we're not going to do is turn up on people in the chat. Women's March is known for a lot of things. One of the things that we are underappreciated for is our block hands. They are very strong. Don't do anything to get blocked. Don't be mean to people. Don't be homophobic. Don't be transphobic. Don't create a space that you don't want to be a part of. Don't be racist. Don't be all of the things like we already know. Don't be ableist. Don't be anything. It will get you blocked. We are not playing baseball right now. We do not operate on a 3 strikes, on a 3 strikes penalty. So let's all stay together. Let's stay respectful, and let's build this space as one space of many spaces that we actually want to be a part of. Again, my name is Rachel O'Leary Carmona. I'm the executive director of Women's March. We are joined by a number of folks today, all of whom who are going to set the stage. We actually had an illness. Scott Nakagawa, the homie, has been sick. He is not going to talk to us about the landscape. Instead, we are going to have our resident genius, Tamika Middleton, managing director of Women's March, jump in and help us set the broader stage. Probably also ask for Minnie Timaraju, who just joined us from NARAL, to also fill in any gaps that we may see as we start to kind of move that cone down to levels of specificity. Again, you can probably already see the chat moves very fast on webinars like this. If you have a question, put it in the Q&A. We're not going to be able to catch it because it moves so fast. So Tamika, can you come on and tell us, and also like shout out, when we were talking about this, we've been talking about this for a year when things first started popping off in Kaczmarek's Court. And we've been talking about this concept for a year and trying to put it together. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that we would get 225 people on the line to talk about organizing between Albuquerque and Tulsa. You know what I mean? So just shout out to like the people who show up are actually the people, we see like these historical moments and like movements, and it's always somebody behind a podium. And that's not actually where movements happen or where power gets built. Where that happens is actually on calls and with people just like you all who just show up and who are more ready to work like a mop than a mic. So like, just shout out to everybody who's here because it's like, no one's coming to save us and it's down to us. So Tamika, tell us everything. Like set stage. Like what the fuck is even happening is really the question that you're here to answer.
First and foremost, hey everybody. My name is Tamika Middleton. I use she, her pronouns. I am the managing director at Women's March. I am joining you from the parking lot at my daughter's ballet. class. And so appreciate apologies for the lighting type of vibe situation. Rachel told me it's giving post-apocalyptic, dystopian Sarah
I
Connor
said it's
vibe.
giving Sarah Connor
Sure.
in the Terminator on the run in her Jeep. That is
I
that.
love it. I love it. Hashtag goals. Um, I don't reside in the high plains. Fun fact, was born in Texas. But am a red state girly as well. I am from South Carolina, lived in Louisiana and now reside in Georgia. So I have never, I mean, they like to say Georgia's purplish, but I have never not lived in a red state. And I'm from rural South Carolina, so understand sort of the organizing in those inside of those conditions, and also have spent the past 20 plus years organizing in the South, in particular. And so have a deep love and respect for all of y'all who are on the call, all the organizers, and new organizers, brand new organizers, experienced organizers. Get into it. We love it. Um, so they told me to talk about women and authoritarianism and fascism, and sort of the kind of historical to contemporary context. That's what they gave me. So I'm gonna try to meet the assignment here. Um, what at Women's March, we've been talking so much about the ways in which there are a couple conversations that have been happening over the past several years. And we've been having this conversation for a couple years, right? Where like there are people who are talking about these attacks on women, on repro, on LGBTQ folks. And there are people who are talking about democracy and the rise of fascism. And for whatever reason, never the twain shall meet. And for us, it is so important actually that we marry those conversations, because and that we point out the importance of marrying those conversations, because if we don't, we do not understand our fight, right? If we are talking about fascism without talking about all the ways they have been attacking repro, they have been attacking gender, they've been attacking, young people, we are not understanding our fight inside of its full context, and um we are actually building strategies that don't meet the moment. And so what I want to really lift up, and what the conversations we have at Women's March and internally and with our base, is that we talk about the reality that there has never been a fascist regime that did not have an eye to how to attack women. They did not have an eye to gender and the role in gender roles. And so if we look at Italy in particular, and we think about that sort of trajectory of fascism of Mussolini, there are several things for us to think about, and I think several that really have some parallels. One thing that I think is really interesting is that there's sort of the way that historians think about the Industrial Revolution is that the Industrial Revolution actually caused a crisis of masculinity, right? And that World War I came in and actually exacerbated that sort of crisis of masculinity, right? And then what you see in fascism is sort of a response to both what's happening inside of World War I, but also what's happening as a result of this crisis of masculinity. And so, in response to that, is sort of this these attempts to narrow the role and narrowly define the role of women inside of society at that time. And so it's really interesting. There's a quote that I read that was like, that comes from Italy. That's like, Italy has been made. Now we have to make Italians. And so it was very important, not just thinking about the sort of structure of Italy, sort of political structure, but also thinking about the cultural landscape and how the cultural landscape informed and bolstered the political infrastructure, right? And so what that meant was that they had to define what they thought Italians would be, and it became, as you're building this sort of nationalist agenda, and so you have to be clear on what women's role is inside of that national agenda. And for fascists, the role of women is twofold: one, labor, every day as workers, right? And then also labor in terms of reproduction. And so the role of women was to make more Italians. And so it was not just to reproduce, but in particular to reproduce and raise folks who would become a part of this army, who would build the army, who would build the political and military structure inside of Italy. So a couple of things happen. One, that we see already consistently now. One is the restriction of access to birth control, the literal actual laws and policies that restrict access to birth control, which we see now, right? And I was reading this research that talked about how women who, they were also workers in the rice fields. And one of the things they had to be up to when they would use that time to actually talk about what they were experiencing and share remedies on how to actually control their own reproduction. There was also restrictions on access to midwives because midwives would be sharing this information about how to control your own birth, right? And how to control your own reproduction. So restrictions and attacks on the right to reproduce and how we actually control our right to reproduction. But also, what we saw was sort of a nationalizing of the role of women. So we want to not just restrict women, but make them feel like those restrictions are important. We want to define their roles and say, hey, look, you can only be this, but being this is so vital. You are so important. And so then you have women buying into the roles that they are creating, right? So there's a narrowing of women's roles to the household, to motherhood, to reproduction. And then you have in Italy, you even see them doing prizes. Look how many children you birthed. Look how great your children are. You get a reward. You get a medal as a mom, right? And so you have women who are buying into this because of that. And what we see, one of the things we have been discussing on our team is yes, tradwives, exactly. That's Rachel. She knows what it is. So, like, we've had this conversation before. I should have known. Yes, but yes, also Project 2025, right? So the attacks on feminists that you see in Project 2025, but also beyond Project 2025, they give us their playbooks, right? So if you look at the Heritage Foundation released a document in December where they talk very specifically about how they intend to reclaim and redesign feminism so that they can build a feminism that is that is founded, the foundation of which is women as mothers in traditional roles. And so it's very, very parallel to what we see in Italy, what we see in Germany. And so these attacks are not new. What we have to be clear about is that this march to fascism is not actually divorced from abortion rights, not actually divorced from the attacks on IVF, is not actually divorced from the restriction and the defining of roles as we see in these attacks on LGBTQ folks. And so this is very important for not just the making of a fascist America, but for the making of Americans inside of this image, inside of this fascist and authoritarian march. And so those are so very important. Yes, moms are great. As we said, as I said, I am in the car doing on my mommy steez, right? And also, it is not the fullness, it is not the totality of who I am, and it is not the totality of what I contribute to the world. And I also am not my motherhood is not designed to serve a government that seeks to oppress and that seeks to define and strictly define who people are, who gets access to what, etc. And so we have to be very vigilant about ensuring that inside of these conversations, we are having conversations about gender. We are talking about these connections. We are drawing the lines because of what they want us to do is to battle for attention, for platform, for resources. And we cannot be doing that. It actually does not serve us. It actually harms us and harms our movements. And the other thing I want to say is like I was talking about with the women in the rice fields, having these conversations with each other about how they can listen. This is what I do at my house in order to because I don't want to have no more babies, right? The other things they were doing was taking everyday acts, normal sort of household daily acts, and turning them into acts of resistance. And so we have to be doing that every single day. We have to be practicing resistance. We've been talking a lot at Women's March about what it means to practice democracy beyond the ballot box. Fascism cannot thrive if we are consistently in the work and in the practice of democracy. And so we have to be doing that, not just when we vote, but every single day we have to be resisting. And so with that, I'm going to be quiet. Thank y'all so much.
I need to like first of all shout out to Tamika, give her some love in the chat and here because shout out. And she right before this thing, she was like, "Oh my God," because we had this cancellation, someone was sick, and she was like, I don't know what I'm gonna say, so we're gonna have to have a conversation because I don't know what to say, and I feel like this is like the clearest analysis I've gotten in weeks. So just shout out to Tamika again. I did not lie, our resident genius. Um, I will leave you with two quotes from academics before I toss this to Minnie. One is Tressie McMillan Cotton talks about the the battle on women and being related to the cost of social reproduction, that it costs so much more money to have a family and just to like get to work as part of the economic driver to, you know, the fascist like kind of machine over time. And then second, one of my favorite quotes that I've read in a really long time is from a sociologist from the University of Wisconsin, because go Badgers. And she says, her name is Jessica Calarco, and she says that other countries have a social safety net. The United States has women.
Wow.
And I think that for me, like all of the things that Tamika just said ties together with what I know Minnie is about to say, who's our next speaker, is really going to come together for us because Minnie is like an old school Texas, another Texas girly, a Texas organizer, and currently runs Reproductive Freedom for All, formerly NARAL, and has been in the game for a really long time. And I'm sure is going to share a word with us right now about where we are and where we're going and what the fuck is even going on right now.
Thanks, Rachel, and Tamika. I bow down. I've been totally obsessed with trad wives for the past couple of months. What I will just say is this, plus to all of Tamika's analysis, but I see some moms in the chat. I'm a mom. You know, I've got 6-year-old twin boys. They are wild. They keep us on our toes. But, you know, I think it's going to be more and more important for those of us who are just, you know, working everyday moms to be sharing our experience and why we are still progressives and activists and why we believe in bodily autonomy and why we know birth control is healthy and good and saves lives and, you know, all the wonderful benefits of being in charge of your body because our side, we just take it for granted, right? But there is a right-wing funded movement online to discourage women from taking advantage of all the technology to live healthy, full lives. And it is behind that trad wife phenomenon. That is not an organic phenomenon. So I really need all our progressive moms to be out there telling your story, even if it's as mundane as like, I love these kids, but that's why I'm still on birth control, or like, or I want more kids and that's why I'm on IVF. But whatever it is, it's our business and our bodies, right? And that's really what I'm here to talk about. So thanks, Rachel and the team, for inviting me. Thanks to every single one of you for being active with this organization, with these and all the places that you're an activist. As Rachel said, I am a Texan. I'm actually wearing my Sugarland Space Cowboys merch tonight. That was an accident, but I was feeling like my hometown of Sugarland, Texas tonight. So shout out to all the Texans. So look, we already know what exactly the threat of a second Trump administration looks like. It's happening right now, but we went through his first administration and we saw Project 2025 and it told us all we needed to know, and we're already seeing it playing out. And it outlines that plan to decimate our fundamental rights that we know we're already starting on day one of Trump's presidency. So look, we know that the vast majority of Americans support access to abortion, birth control, and IVF. And we will not back down from our work to mobilize and protect reproductive freedom for all. And we do that with all of your support. So here's the landscape. 21 states in this country right now are enforcing bans on abortion. But that's just the beginning. We know that Trump will not stop until abortion is banned nationwide in every community. And we know that he and his administration, which is stacked with Project 2025 authors and right-wing extremists, will not stop until they've restricted access to birth control and IVF in every state. And that is the end game. So that's why he's already started filling his cabinet with extremists who share his radical views on abortion and help him carry out those extreme policies that were outlined in Project 2025. And we're already seeing phase one and being implemented and taking shape with anti-abortion cabinet appointments. He's already announced a slew of extremist nominations for several positions, including RFK Jr. for Secretary of HHS, Martin McCary for FDA Commissioner, Pam Bondi for Attorney General, and it goes on. There have been more announced every single day. And right now, one of the most important pieces of the Trump plan to attack our rights is the Comstock Act, which again was outlined in Project 2025. And honestly, we're not talking about it nearly enough. It's the single most dangerous threat to abortion rights in this country. The GOP wants to misuse it. It's a 150-year-old law, which was passed before women even had the right to vote. It is a law targeting obscenity in the mail, and they have used it to block birth control access in the mail. And we know that they have announced their intent to do the same to ban abortion medication being sent across state lines nationwide, even in states where abortion is protected. This is really critical. They're also attacking medication abortion in the courts, and we have to be vigilant to make sure they don't also use Comstock to restrict and block medication abortion crossing state lines. And this is how far they're willing to go to ban abortion, by using a piece of legislation that is almost 200 years old. They know their agenda is wildly unpopular, and so their solution is to subvert Congress completely. They can't pass anything in Congress now, so they want to go around Congress and ignore the will of the people and put the people who put them in office in the first place. So look, we already know Pam Bondi is talking actively to Republican state attorneys general about what they can do using the DOJ to help revive Comstock. So we are vigilant, and we need you to be vigilant. And we will work together with our friends of the Women's March to make sure we are engaged and activated and ready to rise up and make them pay if they do this dangerous move, which we fully expect them to do. But I will say this: this is the first Trump administration post-Dobbs. And Trump won in part by promising not to take federal action on abortion and by saying he would, quote, leave it to the states, which is a terrible policy and very dangerous, because leave it to the states means total abortion bans in places like our home state of Texas. But our job, therefore, is to pay so much attention and give so much scrutiny to every single thing a Trump administration does so that we can raise the alarm, because he does not want, I'm going to use a Rachel term, he does not want this smoke. He does not want our smoke. He does not want us in the streets. And he knows we will be ready to activate. And he knows how powerful women activists are in this country. So it's
I
not
have a
just
follow-up
Trump.
question, Mindy.
Yes. I'll
Can you-
pause.
Can you tell me what kind of a judge Matthew Kacsmaryk is in Amarillo, and why, as a Part B, it is a sack of shit type of judge?
That is the technical term.
That's
That is
the
the technical
I don't know if
judicial
you're a lawyer.
term
I'm not a lawyer,
for a
but
judge called.
understanding is that
I'm a lapsed. I'm a very bad lapsed lawyer, but the technical term is sack of shit. I'm just kidding. We're gonna make that though the new term. So Matthew Kacsmaryk is like straight out of right-wing extremist casting, right central casting. He is a certifiable lunatic, a right-wing extremist, a true believer in some of the most racist, sexist, extreme ideologies that are behind so much of the attacks on our fundamental freedoms and liberties in this country. It is why he and his single court federal court in Amarillo has been the place where so many, excuse the pun, but so many trumped up lawsuits have been filed in Amarillo to go through Kacsmaryk's court. You know, the anti-abortion movement was trying to move a ban on medication abortion through litigation for decades. They could not get a regular Republican judge in any other part of the country to take this case seriously, because medication abortion was approved 20 plus years ago. It is safe. It is safer than Tylenol. It has been studied. It has been on the market. And this is an attempt, the lawsuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court and the court punted on, but it left the door open for more bad actors in red states to do more crazy shit, and for Pam Bondi to misuse the Comstock Act. That whole effort is an effort to go again around Congress by using the courts to reverse authorization by the FDA of medication abortion. They know they can't ban abortion nationwide, so they're going to go through the courts, through shitheads like Matthew Kacsmaryk. They're going to go through executive action and administrative action, like trying to use things like the Comstock Act. And then one of the worst things that's happened that's not getting enough attention is the Trump administration withdrew its case defending emergency medical action, or the emergency medical statute that protects those of us who might be dying and need emergency abortion care to live. The Biden administration filed suit to enforce that law in red states with abortion bans. The Trump administration has withdrawn that suit. So all of that to say is we have activist extremist judges all over the country. They are a major danger to our fundamental rights. The Supreme Court is stacked with them, but Matthew Kacsmaryk, right there in Amarillo, Texas, is the most extreme, so much so that they're sending every cuckoo case they can in the country to him, and he's kicking it right back up to the Fifth Circuit, which is another band of crazies.
Mm-hmm. And yes, and someone said that Josh Hawley's wife is involved, and yes, that is true.
It's true.
And her name is Erin Hawley, and she's involved. And also, they are incorporating organizations inside of Amarillo so that they have standing, because of course, part of the reason that they got kicked out was standing. But also there's a guy who's made death threats to some of the people on this call that is one of their lead plaintiffs as well, who has sued for the rights of parents to deny birth control to their minor children. So just like all around, there's a lot. There's like many different sizes and shapes of sacks of shit involved in this ecosystem that we have here.
This is why it's so important, and why, as for reproductive freedom for all. And I was actually just in Austin at South by Southwest with some of our partners talking about court reform. And it's why it's important for us to be attacking this problem at every level, right? It's the federal elections, it's electing great folks at the state level, but it's also working on judicial nominations. It's also running for judge. Are you a lawyer on this call? Have you thought about running for a judicial post? In many states down ballot from state Supreme Courts on down, those roles are elected. So we need progressives, we need activists, we need folks who actually are, client-centered in their approach. This is some terminology I learned from our friends at Demand Justice. Think about, folks who are public defenders, folks who are legal aid attorneys, folks who are abortion rights attorneys. We finally got an abortion rights attorney. The attorney, Julie Rickleman, who argued the Dobbs case in front of the Supreme Court, is now a federal judge, thanks to Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer. We need thousands of those types of attorneys throughout the judiciary across the country at every single level. And there's a big one coming up, a big election in Wisconsin that I know a lot of us are working together on to make sure we get the right person who is a pro-abortion justice on the state Supreme Court. So we've got to do all of it. And it's exhausting and it's overwhelming. But the cool thing is we have the energy and the enthusiasm on our side because folks are pissed off, they're fired up, and they're looking for ways to get in the fight. And so we've got them. We've got a lot of activity to do, and we've got to make sure we are constantly raising the alarm on justices like Matthew Kacsmaryk.
Mm-hmm. I go to the gym with him, and every time he sees me, his heart like drops out of his ass and he gets off of the machine immediately. So, and that's the other thing about organizing in places like this is that like, we're not, I worked at Women's March for many years and called for Trump to be impeached and actually was successful a couple of times, but you never see your ops up close, where some of us in these smaller communities are like going to the grocery store and going to the gym, and maybe our kids go to, daycare with someone else's kids. And so this is like, the rubber hits the road in a different way. And I want to name before I kick it, and thank you, Minnie, so much for the landscape analysis. We're trying to like get into all of the things. I want to name a couple of things that I saw in the chat. First of all, some people are asking for what do we do in this hopeless time? And completely like what we're saying right now is, the landscape analysis, which I just feel like it's kind of like just the facts situation. It's like the facts are fucking grim. So like, I completely understand why, people feel like the need to, create some space to hold some hope. And I would say that somebody actually just asked me this today, and they were like, if you had to talk to your younger self, like, what would you tell her today? And I guess I think the bravest thing that we can do is to face what to understand and be truthful about what we're facing. And I'm of the opinion that we are in the midst of a rise of fascism in our country and in our communities. Some of us already live in states where we are facing fascism. Everyone was like, isn't it so different since Trump's election? I was like, I live in Amarillo. I was like, it's the same, and so like some of us are already in captured states and some of us are experiencing that for the first time. And so we all have to just meet ourselves where we're at. But hope is a discipline. And part of it is about what we do and how we build together. And so when we're talking about how we can create hope for each other, I would say, listen, we may have to face fascism, but we don't have to choose to do it alone. So get involved inside of a political vehicle. There's multiple on this call right now. We're going to hear from another one next, but we're also going to hear from local organizers. And so we do have a what to do portion that we are moving into right now. There's a method to our madness that we're moving on to. And this is the first of a number of calls that we're planning to make. The purpose of this call is to put us inside of a formation so that we in this region, many of whom, like Amarillo, Texas, for example, is positioned in a place where we're closer to Oklahoma City and Albuquerque than we are to Dallas or other big cities. And so we're trying to think about in a time when we have to think about organizing and building power in a different way, is this a place that we can do that in a vehicle that makes sense? So with all of that said, I want to kick it to Stephanie Gomez right now from Move Texas, and she will tell you about her role and give you kind of like a Texas overview. And we're going to narrow down and to start talking about how we get into the specifics and the nitty gritty.
Hello, nice to meet y'all. My name is Stephanie. I also go by Steph. Either is fine. Pronouns are she, her, and I am the political director at an organization called Move Texas. We are a youth power building organization. We've been around, I think, like 11 years now. And our work, honestly, is something that I've been doing this for a while. I'm only 30, so not as long as some folks that I've, been really, really blessed to learn from, but like, you have to understand that in my work, I am considered what I've been called as a movement elder. And so just because I got my start in 2014 and people are like, why would you even consider data from back then? That was so long ago. And anyway, so I think one thing that is super important to understand about Texas is truly, I think, the partnership that I really believe that organizations and activists and communities need to be building with young people, understanding that I think for a young person, you have to really understand everything that you are going through right now, all that feeling, that hopelessness, they are also going through. But at the same time, understand that most young people enter, their first experiences with adulthood also maybe not fully understanding how much our society has conditioned them to be disempowered. And so like, I think my therapist always tells me it's like the more things you go through, the more like what you're able to get through. And so I think it's, really important to understand, right? We have been through the Trump administration, but for a lot of the people who voted for the first time in 2024, they were 10 years old when Trump, came into office, and they might have lived through it, but it's like they weren't up getting the live updates on Twitter about, the Muslim ban. They weren't up, day and night seeing his tweets, right? Like they also weren't there for some other moments, but it was just like, I think for them, this moment, I really have just been hearing from young people that it's like what they're looking for us as like people who have been doing this work is truly an opportunity to engage meaningfully. I was at the Capitol all day today because they are hearing the school vouchers bill. And so I was there with a bunch of young folks, and you have they are there right next to the lobbyists. They're right there, right next to the community leaders, like truly holding it down. For every legislative session that I've been in, the people who are there from the moment from the moment the committee hearing opens all the way till 3 a.m. waiting for their moment to testify is often the young folks who are just happy to be there and happy that they have been given the opportunity to engage meaningfully. And I think that at Move Texas, that's something that we absolutely really, really prioritize and like to help other organizations. Like, what does it actually mean to build power with young people, not on their behalf, which I think is something that we, I think as a progressive movement have been grappling with, I think a lot with, the dynamics between white activists and Black activists and immigrant activists and what that looks like at the intersections of race and ability, but really thinking about what it looks like in age. I think a lot of times people look towards young people when they want someone to just turn out for an event. And they are capable of setting strategy. They are capable of identifying really creative and fun tactics to engage other folks that if it's fun for them, right? And I'm talking about 18 to 24-year-olds, it's going to be fun for you. So I think one beautiful example that's coming up in just about a month is Youth Capital Takeover, which is something that Move Texas does in partnership with a bunch of other youth serving or aligned with youth priorities groups here in Texas, where we've really just redefined what an advocacy day looks like, right? have thought about how do we empower young people to recruit their own communities and just give them the resources to facilitate their own power at the legislature. And that, I think, very much mirrors like the work that has been done in Amarillo, the really beautiful progressive wins we've seen at the local and honestly cultural levels. I think clearly one thing that is really unifying a lot of us here, I think, is our views and our values around reproductive freedom. And that's something that I can promise, and I'm sure y'all remember too, but I remember when I had my abortion when I was in high school, like that was a thing that like we could not talk about. And like, if you were to have told 18-year-old me that like I would be able to get on a Zoom with like almost 300 other people and talk about that freely and openly, like I wouldn't have believed it. And I think for a lot of young people, we also have to understand that like they're able to really lead the charge on cultural change, because we won't have political and electoral wins until we kind of have that change at the cultural and really the micro level, I think, in the way that we interact with each other. And so I really just believe that, I know that I'm only 30 and sometimes I sound crazy because I'm like, oh, the young folks, because for a lot of folks, I am the young one in the room, but they truly are just looking for opportunities to get in. And Texas, the way that Texas is really like a testing ground for some of the worst and scary policies that we're going to see copy and pasted all over the country. I do believe that young people are also a really wonderful, counter example of like when we really come together and we have energy and we have hope and we have creative solutions. That is exactly what we are able to do and come into this work, I think, with honestly the type of energy that we have been needing. And I think it's up to all of us to make sure that we're keeping that energy going and being very welcoming of young people. So that's what I have.
Yay. Love that. And I love the energy. And we have a young person coming up who is very new organizing, is our last speaker who's going to be closing us out, who is talking about like the mobilizations that are happening in ARFA, or I'm in ARFA. I was shouting out ARFA in the post there. So then I just saw ARFA come up across my thing. But also shout out to ARFA. So I saw a couple of y'all on the call. If you can't talk about Amarillo organizing anymore, I don't think, without shouting out ARFA for the work that they've done. Our next speaker is gonna start talking about where the rubber hits the road here. I would love to introduce Kendra Kay, who's talking a little bit about how we're doing some issue, cross-generational, cross-racial, feminist-led organizing here in the I-40 corridor.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Kendra. I'm in Amarillo, Texas, pronouns she, her. I just wanted to start by saying I'm here as a very new activist, organizer, volunteer, fighter. So this really begins because I have been a tattoo artist for about 10 years now. So the people that I attract in my chair are more liberal leaning people in this very red area of Texas. So I'm used to hearing people be very openly racist, homophobic, just gross in general, misogynistic to say the least, especially being a tattoo artist. This is just an industry that's not very welcoming to women. In my time in cultivating this space that offers safety for people that are not cis, male, straight, I've found a little pocket here in Amarillo that is very liberal, very blue ideals, very progressive. And I kept hearing, I don't know what I'm doing in this area because I don't see anybody that's like me. And it's very scary to be here. And I'm very closed off in my own space. And all I could think was like, there's got to be something here for us. There has to be a community for us because I can't be here by myself. And I can't think this way without being around people that think like me. So I started doing a little bit of looking and I found ARFA, Amarillo Freedom, Amarillo Reproductive Freedom Alliance. I found T-Fund. I found Jane's Due Process. I found just a couple of other different things like the League of Women Voters here. I got registered as a deputy so I could like help people get registered to vote last election cycle. There's a lot to be said for grassroots work that not only gets more people involved. It builds your network, your community, your small group of people that you just want to hang out with and get to know in general, which does increase. I truly believe it makes the value of your life, your day-to-day life, just so much more enjoyable. So while keeping this in mind and looking historically at how feminism has taken down fascism, I do believe that we have to work state to state. We've got to increase our size, our voice between Oklahoma, New Mexico, Colorado, and here in Texas. I think if we can be louder, because these places are thought of to be so red and so hateful that it feels like it's almost like our politicians think like we're not going to waste any time up in these little red areas, these holes in the ground, because they're their country, their farmer, they're not going to change how they think and how they treat people. We can say whatever we want over here because no one's going to speak up, but they're wrong. And what we need to do is we need to get together and figure out how we can be as loud as possible and be heard and stand up for what we need. So I'm inviting everyone into a mutual space where we figure out how are we going to fight this together? How are we going to come together for protests, for boycotts, for just serving each other? I mean, all the way down to how can we help our communities succeed in a time where all the efforts and policies are to make sure that we stay poor, stay sick, stay helpless. So how are we going to be able to do that? We've got, like Rachel's been saying, a big cases coming up here in Amarillo, Texas. So what are we going to do in our day-to-day resistance to let them know we're here, let them know we're paying attention, and keep them on their toes, because they shouldn't just be able to walk on us. No one that's talking to me in the day-to-day is very excited about what's going on and what the state looks like right now. No one's happy with it, whether they're red or blue. No one's pleased with what everything costs, what everything looks like. So I do believe we do have an opportunity to find that common ground. And I do believe the way that ARFA took down Prop A, which was that attempt to keep us from being able to freely travel across states for abortion access and reproductive care, is we let everyone know how egregious that policy would have been to keep us here, to keep us closed down, to keep us from accessing full body autonomy for our choice. So they saw it as government overreach. So I mean, I'm not saying we can only partner together with people that think just like us, but I think we can be loud enough to say, hey, these policies are stepping stones to much worse. They don't ever start at the very top. They start down here at the bottom and they squish little by little. And I think as long as we can power together, then we're going to be successful. We're going to. We just did it in Amarillo. We saw it. We have a blueprint. We can do it. So let's get together. Let's figure out how we can use our voice. Let's do it. We can have fun in the meantime.
Yay. Thank you so much. I've been answering some questions in Q&A, FYI, and there are some questions that came up in the chat that I had just in my mind for when you were going to talk, Kendra. But I just wanted to say that like what's going on in the chat is actually why we started thinking about this, because I don't know if you saw a bunch of Colorado people saying, we're in deep blue Colorado. We got your back. Like what you need, we'll roll down there. I'm like, exactly this conversation. It's like, many of us are very familiar with the idea of mutual aid and that we would help somebody that's in our community or whatever, but how can we think about mutual aid at scale? How can we think about mutual aid being, you know, like we know in the Q&As, they're talking about folks, you know, going to New Mexico for abortions. So what does it look like for blue New Mexico and blue Colorado, all of whom are actually closer? I think both of those are an hour's drive or so from Amarillo, or Colorado. The Colorado border is like an hour's drive from Amarillo. Then I think we're about an hour from the New Mexico border, about 3.5 hours from Albuquerque. So like, what does it look like for us as, you know, these statewide groups to provide mutual aid for each other, you know, and like, what could that look like? We don't know. Like, we don't have any answers. And what I would say also is beware of people who give you answers right now. Beware of people who say that they know what's going on or that there's an expert. What we're saying here is we're trying to try some shit. We don't know if it's going to work. We want to get on a call to see how we can make some shit shake. But guess what? We don't have the answers because we've never been here before as a country. And we're all just going to try some shit. And that's the best thing we got right now. That's the only thing we have right now. So we're going to try some shit. And like, shout out to Kendra, who like, when it came time to be like, who's going to pick up a mop and a broom and who's going to do this work? Kendra's like, I'll do it. I don't give, like, let's do this shit. So like, we're going to get this shit popping around the federal pieces around Kasmerick's court, and to create an interstate organizing hub to pilot. And what works and what lessons we learn, we can share to other places. And if it's something that we make work for 6 months and we get through a certain thing and then it runs its course, then that's what happens. So everybody who is on this call will receive an invitation to that organizing call. It will be a lot less talky and a lot more doey. So the people who are in the chat and in the Q&A being like, put me in, coach, the time will come, and trust that there is the work to do. So that is coming. You don't have to do anything to get that invitation. It's already coming to you. So you don't have to worry about it. It's on its way. And I want to get to Q&A, but first, yeah. So I do protests for a living. Like, I straight up like that's what we do. And I was living my best life, eating some pizza with my brother, who's not always in town. And he said, do you know that there is this huge protest popping off right now downtown to protect immigrant rights? And I was like, I have heard this, but I've been in my own land right now. I had just come back from my own march in January. And they were like, nah, it's lit. And he showed me on Snapchat all the different pictures. I was like, oh my God. So we got downtown and I met my homie Madison. And I was like, nah, like, so I'm going to throw it to Madison right now, who is holding down definitely on I'm on the Crypt Keeper side of the things that y'all were talking about. Madison is like legitimately on the young person side of things. So I want to talk to you about how the youth are getting it the fuck in Amarillo, and how you can join up and what is on the docket for mobilizing.
Hello everyone. My name is Madison Boyle, and I have been helping out to organize. Well, I have been organizing the protests here locally in Amarillo. Thank you so much for having me. So I got kind of started just because people are really racist here, and there are some people who are wanting to organize, and they were too afraid to show their face out of fear of retaliation from people here. So I thought it might be a good idea to kind of take up the plate, and I'm not really afraid to show my face. Let's see. We are going to have a protest happen on March 15th. So that's coming up. That's this Saturday. And I'm super excited. It's basically, I just think that standing up and showing people that we're here, there's hope, and you have a community that supports you. Like, not everybody here is racist. Not everybody here is homophobic. Like, you have a safe space, and it's a lot larger than you might realize. And these protests have been really, really, really showing people that they don't have to be as afraid as other people, like in our families or the government, make us feel. There's power in numbers, and we have those numbers. We just don't get to see them as much. We're just so in our own worlds that we don't get to look out into the other ones. I am young. I'm 21 years old. I turned 21 in November. So it's been a big help that the Women's March, specifically Rachel and Kendra, have kind of been showing me the ropes of what organizing looks like in Amarillo, and really supporting me and telling me that, like, go for it. Like, I have some support here, and I can just go for it and do what needs to get done. I'm also going to organize a protest on April 5th with the national one. And I kind of have a habit of organizing the protest at the same place every single time. So if people see a date on a flyer, they know exactly where it's going to be and exactly what time it's going to be at. Let's see. I will send the flyer out. Sorry.
That's what I was
It's not
just
happening.
I was just on the Facebook post trying to do, and I realized that I have the flyer, but not the link. I don't know if you have a link. I put the date in the chat.
Okay, yeah, I went on my computer and thought about it right beforehand,
That's
so
okay.
I could send it in the chat.
And we can put it in the chat, but also we will send it as a follow-up along with the invitation to the next call. So even if you don't have it right now, I was just going to show it because honestly, the flyer is really fly. It's like a really well-designed flyer. So I
Oh,
was
thank you.
But you can find it on the Amarillo Women's March page. I'm sure you can find it other places if you want to search right now. We will pop it in here, but we will put both the flyer and the link in the follow-up email that is to come. And even for folks who didn't make it onto the call, who may have RSVP'd, something came up, we're going to send that there, and we'll make sure that that's shareable. There's been a couple of questions in the chat about like, how do we send it to people that weren't involved? So everything that we send you, you will be able to send on. And yeah, if y'all could pull up on the 15th, if you're in the area, that is the move.
Yeah, thank you so much everybody for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and I really, really want to see everybody's faces and all the new faces at the next protest. And I'm so grateful that y'all have been such a support and we have such a strong community here. We're not alone, and there's hope and revolution.
I was thinking we were going to get like 75 people on this call, and we had 275. And so I am really excited about what we can build together because we've got 3 concrete next steps. Kendra's like, listen, I'm going to do these organizing meetings. We're going to talk about how we're going to make some shit shake over the long term. Madison is like, oh, and I got y'all like this week, bro, on the 15th. And then again on the 5th, like we are going to be out in the streets. So it's like, we've got the mobilizing, we've got the organizing, and just trying to figure out how we communicate and connect with each other across state lines. And also I will say that there are 2 groups who, by my count, Amarillo Women's March has never missed a mobilization that I know of since 2017. The other groups that is true for is also the Albuquerque March, where we have a board member. And so they are planning to join our what I'm calling our interstate organizing hub. And we also have organizers from Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and the folks from Oklahoma City also work with work inside of the movement as well. And so we're really going to, when we get into nuts and bolts and nitty gritty, get into what it really looks like to create hubs, and what is the need that we're organizing for, what's clear and present, like what is it that we can do, what's our kind of highest and best contribution, and then what are our first steps. And we don't have the answer, so we're all just building together. So I want to just say thanks, because that can be kind of like a lot of disequilibrium, because I think it kind of underscores the fact that like, wow, like no one's coming to say, there's no cavalry. And I guess what we're saying on the call here is we're the cavalry. We're coming to save us. And so, and we know we're enough. And so I'm super excited about this. We got mad questions and we got 6 minutes. So can y'all help me triage the questions that we can get to? So I'm going to just pick here. So I have, as a 60-year-old grandma, how do I motivate my friends who don't seem to be alerted about the issues to jump on the bandwagon with me? Any tips? I've been marching and I joined the ACLU. Here's what I have to say. The best way to get folks in your network to be aware of what's going on is just to continue to talk to them. And on the left, I think a couple of things. One, I think that we have like an atrophied muscle around organizing that we have to get better at. And that means that there are people who we don't agree with on everything, but they are possibly persuadable. And I want to just kind of direct your attention to the right, where they don't say, oh, well, you want lower taxes, but you're not racist, you can't come in. They're like, no, you want lower taxes, and we're going to organize you to become radicalized on the issue of race or on the issue of women or whatever. And they let their organizing speak. And so we have to be willing to do the same thing. We meet people where they are, but we do not leave them there. And so we don't compromise our core values, but we still have to understand that people start where they start. You're not born with all the political knowledge that's in your body. So I would say that you yourself are the best ambassador inside of any of your networks, because people just going to believe you more than they're going to believe me or believe anyone else. And I know that it feels like, oh, well, why would they believe me? They will. I promise you that they will. And that's how change gets made. So I would just say that is what to do. Just keep talking your shit.
Can I add in?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I am actively driving, which is why I'm not putting my camera on. So to add on to Rachel's meet folks where they are, which is like the most fundamental principle of organizing, right? Part of that also is talking to people where they are. And I know that, we get on these calls and, I get in my bag and I'm like, the fascism and the authoritarianism, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But I can remember being a baby organizer. And when I entered the movement as a teenager, I was organizing around the prison industrial complex. And I remember my mentor saying to me, listen here, young woman, if you go into that neighborhood and use the words prison industrial complex, you do not know what you're talking about. If you can't talk to folks without using the big words and the jargon, you need to do more study. And so it's important for us to be able to talk to folks about the concept, about the thing, without using the $30 words, right? My husband likes to say, like, you talk at SAT words. And so how can we not talk to our folks in SAT words? How do we talk to our folks the way our folks talk? And so I think that's like a big thing. But and then the other thing that's really vital inside, organizing basics too, is we have to offer people many, many ways to get in. So your friends might not want to come to a march with you, and that is totally okay. But maybe they're down to sign a petition. Maybe they're down to call their rep. Maybe they're down to share a flyer. Maybe they're down to cook for a meeting. You know what I'm saying? Offer folks many, many ways to get in and get down so that they can find the thing that is their unique contribution to the movement. We all have to get in different ways. There was a moment in time where I'm like, I'm not doing now one additional march. And I'm not going to nobody's rally. I got a newborn. But that doesn't mean that I can't be a part of the movement. And so I had to find what my contribution was, and everyone has to find that thing that is their contribution. And so when we're trying to bring people in, we have to give them a lot of offers of different ways for them to get in.
We are in here like this, trying to answer questions in the chat as well. Tamika, every speaker sounds so positive and powerful on this call. How do we not feel overwhelmed or with what we should do or can do?
I mean, I think to go back to the last thing that I was saying is that we have to think about what it is. We don't need to be in every lane. I think that's the biggest thing for everyone to understand, is that we are going to not only get overwhelmed, but get burnt out if we try to be in every single lane. You have to think about, what are the things that I contribute? What is my role in this particular moment? And that role may change from time to time. What we're showing, how we're showing up may be different, but we cannot do all the things. Which is why we're in organizations, which is why we're in community, which is why being in relationship with other folks who are doing the work is so very important, because we all have different things to contribute. So figure out the thing that is yours to contribute, the thing that moves you, the thing that gets you energized, and do that thing. Also, we want to be in the business of remembering what are the things that we do that keep us resilient and that keep us whole. And so when I say resilient, I'm not talking about, oh, child, you can smack her in the face and she bounce back every time. What I mean when I say resilient is, what are the things that you do that make you feel whole and alive? And do those things, the things that bring you a sense of wholeness and a sense of aliveness. And make sure that you are in the practice of doing those things. Those things are a priority as well, because at the end of the day, I always say that, like, when I get to liberation, y'all, I want to be well. And I want to be in right relationship with folks. I don't want to get to freedom and be broke down. Okay. So make sure that you are doing things that are sustainable. You don't have to scroll and read every article, friends and family. You don't like go. I tell folks, I'm going to hop off the news real quick and go read me a good old romance novel. Whatever that is for you, make sure that you are in the practice of doing that.
We have a question here about, can you repeat what day the Youth Capital Takeover is?
Can I? Yes. Oh my gosh. And Rachel, I know Akeem has heard me talk about it, but I can also send y'all the email or additional information so people can get it via email. But we are doing a youth-led advocacy day. It is punk and grunge themed. In Austin, we're
say less.
Yeah, so come through. It is going to be April 15th and 16th. I have so many details. I, as the elder emo, won the the theme we were going to do, but I would love to see everyone there.
This is me dying. This
Yeah.
is me dying that the elder emo is 30 years old. I protest.
Solidarity.
I protest. Keep going.
Oh, me? Keep going. I finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You're
April
it. You were
15th
it.
and 16th.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
After you told me with the elder emo thing, then you just were like, and I'm ending there. You can.
I'm so excited about the theme because I was emo all through 6th and 10th grade. But yes.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. In a different era. I'm not gonna say which one, but my Doc Martens, they're older than you. Like
Bust them out though. Bring them.
Like,
Bring 'em.
I can't deal with this. Madison, you've got some dates to remind people of.
Yeah, okay. April 15th, Amarillo, Texas. We are going to be down at the old city hall. Because that's the most visible place, and everybody is going to see our faces whether they like it or not. They don't have a choice. April 5th, also in Amarillo, also at the old city hall. Nobody knows where the new city hall is, so let's do it at the place. Everywhere is visible. They're gonna see our faces. They don't have a choice. We're going to resist, and nobody's gonna be able to get us out of there. Anyways, so that is gonna be from 5 o'clock to 6:30. I don't want to keep anybody out there for too long. Just I don't want it to get too cold, too dark, or tire anybody out. I have a bedtime, and I'm going to try and stay to it. I am really excited to see everybody there. And if you don't actually need a permit to protest, sorry, I just saw a question. But I am in contact with the city, and I already have gotten permission. I do that every time just because then they don't get a chance to be like, oh, well, you're not allowed to be there. Well, actually, no, I talked to the cops and recorded the entire conversation. So I am allowed to be here.
Sorry.
Huh?
That better safe than sorry, especially in Amarillo, Texas.
Yeah, I talked to
So
the
we
city,
got
and then
April
yeah,
or March 15th.
15th this
and
Saturday,
Okay.
and April 5th. And
Yes.
I am so excited to see y'all all there.
And all of this will be in the wrap-up email. Kendra, I know our date is landing. Did it land?
Yes, we are looking at sorry. My iPad died and it has all my dates on it, so super helpful. April 1st is going to be our follow-up meeting for when we're going to come together and start having that first conversation of how we can all brainstorm and make the most efficient, biggest change that we can day to day.
And all of this will be in a wrap-up email. We're going to make it shareable. Bring your friends, bring your people. All of us organizing inside of the networks we're already in organically is actually the best way. No one wants to see a stranger at their doorstep. We all do not answer the phone when it rings. We all do not allow the spam calls to come. So the best way that we can get inside of communities and organize them is just to be there already. And, to already be doing the work in terms of keeping relationships. And that's really what, to me, that's how I would end this, is to get us through. I know we're 5 minutes over. I have no commitment to ending things on time. I am Mexican. And so what I would say is, our relationships are what matters. And for me, I just think that being my central commitment to myself and the people around me is I do what I say I'm going to do always. And so I think if we can be in integrity, if we can do what we say we're going to do, if we can keep the relationships and the commitments that we say we're going to make, if we can, be there for each other, to rise up for each other and to be in solidarity with each other. Barbara Smith, who some of you may not know, but you should all know, who is one of the conveners of the Combahee River Collective Statement. She's the person who literally put her pen to a piece of paper and wrote down the word identity politics for the first time. She tells me two things all the time. The first thing that she tells me all the time is I never thought that people would run with identity and leave the politics on the floor. And that part of what she talks about there is that it was important not just that they were Black, but that they were lesbians, that they were socialists, that they were anti-capitalist, they were folks who stood up for people with disabilities. They were people who had disabilities. They were all of these things. And so we cannot forget about the politics part and how we are with each other. But then she also tells me, I call her all the time. I'm like, Barbara, someone did me dirty. And I don't know what to say. And she said, Rachel, you young ones forget that it's called the struggle because the shit is hard. So don't ever forget that we are in a movement, we are in a struggle that long. Someone on a call recently told me that the resistance started in 2017, and I highly suggested that they pick up a history book, because for most of us here, like a lot of us are in communities, some of us are in states, and some of us are from people who were struggling, you know, in place before this country was even a country. And so what we have to understand is that our country was founded on principles of protest. Resistance is in our DNA, and the shit is hard because it's meant to be hard. And that we just have to, what we have to get us through that is to struggle through. So I want to thank you so much for coming here and doing the hard thing. This lighting has me looking crazy. I swear to God, I have eyebrows, y'all. You just can't see them right now. But we were going to be in touch with a follow-up email. I am super happy to be doing all this work with you. I'm in Amarillo. We're going to be making trips to the local areas soon. We have an Albuquerque trip on our docket. We have actually recently, our sister organization endorsed Deb Holland. And so I think we'll be seeing a little bit more of our New Mexico people. I'm in Oklahoma probably 4 times a month. And in Colorado, less than I would like to be. And so I'm actually going to work on that as part of my 2025 resolutions. Although one of my besties in the world lives there, so I'm gonna be there more. So we're gonna make this shit shake, y'all, because we need to do something different to get something different. And I feel like this is a model for us to get there. Thank you all so much for everything that you do. We will see you in the streets, and you will see an email from us with all of this information wrapped up so that we can get some shit popping. Bye.